So welcome everybody to the meeting, and a special welcome to Ferial, our independent person. Welcome to the Town Hall, and a welcome and congratulations to Councillor David, the new Vice Chair of the committee. So welcome to you both. I'm just going to hand over to Andrew to go through the protocol before we start the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. Just a reminder to members that live stream, as Deputy Mayor Bramble said. For those joining remotely, to keep your camera on during the proceedings unless you're having bandwidth or connection issues. If you wish to speak, use the raise hand function and direct all communications via the chair. Please ensure that you have your mics muted when you are not speaking, apart from the chair, in this case the room as well. The temporary connectivity issue. Just to pick up where we were, please ensure that your mics are muted when you're not speaking, apart from the chair, who does not need to mute their mic at any stage. If you are having technical difficulties, please use the chat function in Google Meet to alert the meeting. Please do not use the chat function for putting formal questions to the committee or making any other comments. Any persistent disruptive behaviour will result in removal from the meeting. And just a reminder to those in the room, only speak when invited to by the chair. If you're referring to a specific page or picture in the report, please refer to the paragraph number. Many thanks.
Okay. So I'll just repeat again, just to welcome again Councillor David, who joins us as the Standards Vice Chair, and also to Ferial, who is our independent person. So welcome to you both. Apologies. I've received apologies from Nicola. Any other apologies?
Mira.
And Hamira, thank you. Any declarations of interest? Item 3 on the agenda, unrestricted minutes of the previous meeting of Standards Committees held on the 17th of February. Do colleagues have any queries or comments?
Nope.
Can we agree those minutes then of the Standards meeting on the 17th of February as accurate recording of the proceedings? Thank you. Great. Item 4 is the terms of reference and draft work programme. I'm going to ask Andrew to introduce the item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to draw the committee's attention to their terms of reference as set out in the Constitution. This is something we do at the beginning of each administrative year, just to serve as a reminder. There's been no substantial changes to those terms of reference in recent years. However, we are looking as part of the Constitution review work at potentially developing some terms of reference for the assessment subcommittee and hearing subcommittee, and we will be involving members of this committee in helping us prepare those. The work programme just sets out the proposed areas of work for the standards committee this year. You'll be aware you only normally have 2 scheduled meetings a year, but can reconvene to consider complaints as they arise. The terms of reference broadly follows the same, sorry, not terms of reference, the draft programme broadly follows the same pattern as previous years, with some regular standing items, including the annual report, which we'll be looking at today. And in February, looking at a review of the Register of Interests. We do have some ongoing work around members' code of conduct, and councillors will recall they were involved as a task and finish group looking at the proposed model code of conduct by the Local Government Association. We're still awaiting some updated guidance from the Local Government Association, but once that has been published, we will reconvene the task and finish group to review that and then potentially take forward in the autumn. Very happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Councillor David?
Louder mic could use and speak it to make it.
Can you hear myself? Is it both of us or just Andrew? If you could project your voice, just pretend you're a teacher trying to speak to the back of the room. Is that all right? Okay, if there are no questions on that report, can I ask you to note the terms of reference for 2021, 2022 as set out in Appendix 1, and also to agree the draft work programme for 2021-2022 as detailed in Appendix 2 in the report. Yep. Is that noted?
Noted.
Thank you. Item 5 on the agenda is members' use of ICT, the 10th annual report. Can I ask Rob Miller to introduce the report? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Bramble. Hopefully colleagues can hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. As you said, Chair, this is the 10th annual report, so we bring an update each year on the members' use of ICT, the data protection training we're providing, the provision of the ICT to members, and then we've also talked a little bit about things which are very much in the moment. Firstly, the move to virtual committee meetings and hybrid meetings in response to the pandemic, and then also members' use of IT during since the cyber attack in October. I shan't read the report verbatim. In terms of those headline updates, in terms of members' use of ICT, section 3, I'm sure Standards Committee will be pleased to know there were no incidents reported relating to members' use of ICT during the 2020 calendar year. And that maintains a trend since 2018, which is very positive. In terms of training, we had made great strides in terms of the training, data protection training for members prior to the pandemic. Members have particularly complex data protection requirements because, as well as the information that they handle in their role within the council, they also handle data in their context as members of the political parties they're part of, and individually as ward councillors as well. So the training which members have had reflects those different contexts, which are more complicated than those which, for example, officers have. We had made good strides with that. Like I said, we had a small number outstanding when the pandemic landed, which disrupted the wrap-up of that training with the disruption to face-to-face training. We're putting in place arrangements to finish that as the lockdown restrictions ease. And we're also will be making sure that we deliver that training for the new members who were elected in the by-elections in May. And then just a reminder that members are very welcome to ask us if they need data protection advice. We work closely with colleagues in member services and governance services. So between us, we can make sure that we give members the advice they need if they have data protection concerns. In terms of equipment, so the standard offer remains the same. Hopefully members have found they've had the the equipment they need to be able to carry out their roles during the pandemic. I know we've responded to a small number of requests for additional help, but hopefully the work we'd already done to provide flexible access to our systems and data whilst remaining secure has helped members carry out their roles during this really challenging time. We will work with the members reference group looking ahead to the May 22 elections and thinking about what can we learn from members' needs, especially with all the changes that have happened over the last 18 months, to make sure that we've got a really good offer for members returning and joining the council after the May 22 elections. In terms of virtual committee meetings, so everything moved very fast last year. We're very pleased with how that went. I think it was a really good partnership of, again, member services, government services, ICT, and members themselves. And it's been really good to see how people have adapted to online meetings and how that really important work of the council's democratic processes have continued. We've had a total of 181 meetings that were successfully delivered online to the end of June this year, from when they began on a sort of a procedural basis from the beginning of June last year. And recordings of meetings have been streamed on the council's YouTube channel. So we've actually, through this, opened up the council's democratic processes together. So from early May, the temporary regulations expired, and therefore we've moved into hybrid arrangements. So we have the current arrangements now, which are based on a rapid piece of work together, again, working across different groups of officers to put in place the best arrangements we could. And we have further work taking place looking at what might longer term upgrades to our audiovisual equipment look like to support hybrid meetings moving forwards. But we know we're also dependent on any legislative changes around that. Just need to flag that at the moment we don't have funding in place for those, so we would need to develop a business case and secure funding for further upgrades. And then finally, in terms of the cyber attack, so members will be acutely aware of the really serious cyber attack on the council's legacy systems, which happened in October 2020. Hackney had already been moving strongly towards use of public cloud services, which gives us, amongst other things, industry-leading security protections. So our Google Workspace service, which we had moved our email, document stores, collaboration, video meetings to, and was unaffected by the cyber attack. The Modern Gov system, which is used for committee papers, was affected by the cyber attack. That was still running on one of our older platforms on the council's own servers. We've recovered the data from Modern Gov, and work is now in test, or Andrew May advised work has now completed testing because it's in the final stages of the testing, so that we can put the Modern Gov system back into action, which will restore the archive, the historic archive of committee papers, and will allow the governance services teams to return to a more familiar form of publishing papers. But I do have to kind of pay tribute to the way in which, amongst many other services, governance services have responded. And I've seen very positive comments in the Twitter sphere about how the council was able to publish papers for meetings and carry on using Google Drive, using the Meet video meetings. So I think that's a good example of how across the whole council, services have stood up against these criminal attackers and made sure that as many as possible of our core services can continue. Some members, just to wrap up, along with officers, have reported concerns about phishing emails and text messages. There has sadly, along with the very rapid rise of the type of severe attack which hit our internally hosted servers, we've also seen criminals preying on the public and using things like text message scams and email scams to try to defraud people. Obviously, when those cases come through, we'll investigate those on a case-by-case basis. We don't want to assume that because there's a lot of it about, then none of these things are real. So we will look into each of those, and I know that we've looked into those where members have flagged those. Chair, that's all I wanted to run through.
Thank you. Before I take comments from colleagues, if they have them, just to thank you and the team. I know you've had to all work very hard in light of the cyber attack, and I know that you have been working tirelessly to ensure that council could run its businesses. We just have to continue to communicate with the public as much as we can about what we can, obviously that they have concerns. I'm really, really proud, and so is the Mayor, that we were one of the first councils, if not one of the first councils, to have their first cabinet back in April. It seems so far away now, in 2020, just after the lockdown, and it's been a real testament to what we believe in democracy in Hackney, that we have continued to have meetings online. I think that the good practice that we have now, meeting virtually and hybrid models where we're allowed to, where those meetings don't sit within the constitution of the Localism Act, that we should keep those virtual and hybrid meetings going to increase accessibility for members and for officers. But just to thank you and the team, I know that a few councils have queried some support, and rightly so. I've been copied into those emails, and that has been picked up really swiftly, because, you know, it doesn't matter how long you've been a councillor, sometimes your needs for ICT does vary. And I think it was a very savvy, you know, foresight move for us on Google Meets, because actually we already set up for virtual meetings before the attack and the lockdown, and I think that has paid us very well in terms of the way we conduct our business. Do colleagues have any comments on this item? Councillor Woodley.
Yeah, just one question about the access to the council's telephony service using web access or a mobile app. I'm very pleased to hear that we have that, but I haven't actually experienced that as a reality myself, and I'm curious to know where we are with that.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Woodley. We've had in place for the last 4 or 5 years a telephony service which is cloud-based. Again, that was an advantage when the cyber attack hit us. If we had been on our old systems, that would have meant that we couldn't receive phone calls as well, which would have been a crisis for our customer contact. We're currently this summer, and we've started, I think the first 400 or 500 people have moved over to the new service that we've recently procured. If you would, I can follow up afterwards to make sure that when that new service is rolling out across the wider group of users, which includes members, we can make sure that's available to you. It would basically allow you to make and receive phone calls as if they were coming from a council phone number using your computer, signing in with the same Google account that you use to access your email. And you can also put an app onto a mobile phone which will allow you to achieve the same outbound and inbound calls. So effectively, you can make and receive phone calls as if you were at a council desk using a council telephone, but with a great deal more flexibility and with that security and resilience that comes from using a wide, a global scale public cloud service.
Thank you.
So, Rob, just on the back of that query by Councillor Woodley, my understanding was that that wasn't rolled out straight away because ICT was in the middle of changing programs. Is that correct? So has that transition happened now for this to now go live for members to start using?
Yes, that's right, Councillor Deputy. I remember we've the procurement work finished in the spring, and we're now at the rollout stage. So the first 400 or 500 users have started using it, and the remaining, in the region of 3,000 users, will be migrated in stages over the summer. So that should be something which we can offer very soon.
Okay, so I think it would just be helpful for you and I outside of the meeting to think about that start date, and we can update members on that, because I know that they're very keen to use that service.
Absolutely, happy to do that.
Thank you. Aoife.
Hi. Rob, thank you very much for that overview. I just had a question about the when you referred to how promising it had been, how few incidents there had been of IT breaches. And when I looked at it, it seemed most of them were self-reported breaches if you lost your mobile phone device or a laptop that may potentially contain information belonging to the council. And those strike me as incidents where, a member would refer themselves to the IT department and say, oh, I've lost my laptop. Well, what about other types of non-compliance and non-compliance with the council's policy on social media or speech, or how one communicates? Does your team also have its own internal controls to police or test compliance with those policies? I mean, presumably you have your own controls. I'm just interested in the experience, in your experience.
So yes, absolutely. So the policies and the tracking here relates to the use of the council systems for members' business. We're not overseeing members' use of kind of external communication tools, social media, and the like. So that's not part of this report. I don't know whether there's an update from Dawn or colleagues in governance.
Thanks, Rob. No, we don't have a specific response, or not response, but an update on members' use of social media, if that's where the question is going, insofar as it departs from what we look at when we get complaints with regards to members' use of social media. So we don't have anything specific that we would be reporting to standards on today. It's something, if you would like us to look into, we could look into and report back at another standards committee meeting, if that's something that you would like us to provide a response to.
Thanks, Dawn. Thanks, Rob. It was just a general question to see how how the policies work in IT, and Rob, I think, explained clearly that this is specifically towards not external communication, but devices belonging to members. So understood. It's just a point of clarification for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, so on that note, can members note the update of the members' use of ICT, data protection training and provision of ICT equipment of members? Note the continued use of virtual committee meetings and live streaming and the steps being taken to support hybrid meetings. And note the update re the impact of the cyber attack on members' use of ICT.
Great.
Noted.
Noted.
Thank you. On to item 6, the Standards Committee Annual Report. Can I hand over to Dawn to introduce the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. So good evening to everyone. The report that we are looking at this year is our draft annual report for the municipal year 2020 to 2021. And this report will go to our next full council meeting, which will take place in the autumn, which is in October 2021. The report, as you will see from the Chair's introduction, provides an overview of the committee's work, the Standards Committee's work that you have completed over the year 20 to 2021. And it was great to see that the report covered a wide variety of the work that you had completed as a Standards Committee. So what the report also does is provide colleagues across the council, so your colleagues who are councillors and also members of the public, residents and officers, with a really great overview of what the committee has done in respect of upholding standards within the council on a year by year basis. So, for example, the report sets out what work has been done with regards to the members' code of conduct, and we have a verbal update on that later, so I won't go into that now. It also looks at the review of register of declaration of interest forms. Thank you, Councillor Williams. We will definitely look at the spelling of names and apologise if there have been any name that was spelled incorrectly. So my apologies for that. We also set out the complaints that have been received about members' conduct and been received as myself as the monitoring officer. Again, this report is a standard report, follows a standard template that we will adopt, and we have adopted and used on a year in, year on basis, and so therefore hopefully should not be or have any surprises to members in the meeting today. It also sets out dispensation requests that have been received and agreed by yourselves, and also if they were required to agreed at full council as well. And then finally sets out the recruitment of the independent person. And thankfully we are able to have with us today our newly appointed independent person. Unfortunately, we were not able to appoint to the co-opted members, but again, that will be discussed. A verbal report will be provided on that later on in the meeting tonight. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dawn. Any comments? Councillor Lynch.
Thank you, Dawn, for this. My question is in regard to the dispensation requests on page 45. Yeah. And I'm aware that we are within the council looking at dispensations in regards to the ongoing pandemic and to maintain the health and well-being of some of our members, and I wondered whether or not the standards committee would need to be involved with that, or am I correct in my understanding that this will just go straight to full council?
So thank you for the question, Councillor Lynch. That's very appropriate. You're right in the circumstances that we're currently facing. No, the dispensations with regards to a non-attendance for meetings or the 6-month dispensation will be all taken to this month's full council meeting on the 21st of July. So any requests that have been received will be included in a report, and they will be presented at this month's full council meeting, where the dispensation will then be granted. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Can I ask colleagues to endorse the annual report attached in Appendix 1 prior to submission to full council?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 7 on the agenda, council training. I'm going to ask Bruce to introduce the report.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. Obviously, I'm going to make an assumption. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. Obviously, I'm going to make an assumption. Members have read the report, but just sort of in summary, it lays out the overall direction of member training, but also what training we've done in the last year. The main focus this year has obviously been a shift in delivery method, that we've had to move to online training rather than in-person training because of COVID-19. But that, I think, has brought a number of benefits in that it has made training a lot more accessible for members, and we're now recording all sessions, so they're available for members to view after the event if they're not allowed to attend. And we've also recorded a number of sort of mini briefing sort of sessions as well, sort of short, sharp, sort of 5-10 minute pieces of training and updates as well to make those available. So we've had a sort of a shift of delivery method, and I think I would say that's, from the feedback we've had so far, being beneficial. Our focus now is moving on to our plans for member induction for 2022, and obviously a new cohort of members, and again a change of focus there to try and make that a lot more ward based, and a lot more on the ground if we can, so that people, I think that's particularly important for both members and officers post as we move out into the sort of next stage of COVID-19, that we keep that as place based, so that there is that sort of in-person focus. The report includes sort of details of the training that's been delivered, a couple of sessions that have had to be cancelled last year due to COVID, and those that we've got planned for the rest of this year. With all these things, fitting it in is always the challenge in amongst all the other sort of meetings and political meetings that there are. But I think every available slot that there is, almost toward the end of the year now, has got a session planned in it. So there's lots of updates. Obviously happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Bruce. And I know that you and the team have worked to ensure that training goes on throughout. And as you rightly said, it's all been online. I suppose my reflections is going forward, it's more a hybrid model where you may have some people wanting to be involved in training virtually and some people may decide to come in, is just, has there been much thought around that? Because obviously having an all-person meeting, an all-virtual meeting is very different to the hybrid model. And have we thought about that in terms of training?
Yes, we have thought about it. We've got a number of rooms in the town hall that can accommodate that, and where we can, we'll deliver and offer a hybrid model, because I think there's lots to be said for in person, being able to interact, but equally online makes it a lot more accessible. And the previous work that we'd done with members and surveying members was that the online model was obviously a very popular one, but there's no reason why we can't and should not be delivering hybrid training in the future. The only exceptions to that might be where we've got external speakers coming in, where we may find that they may prefer to deliver via an online method going forwards.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Maima?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to ask about particularly the rescheduling of the sessions that had to be cancelled. Just obviously some things have more impact than others, and I just wonder in particular about kind of safeguarding training. It's a little concerning to see that hasn't got a date against it, and it was cancelled in 2020, and we're in fast forwarding to the end of 2021 now. I just wonder when that will happen, because to my mind that should be a mandatory thing that should happen on a regular basis. And given we've been able to do other stuff, that seems a bit odd that hasn't happened.
Yes, since this has
been so, but we've had the elections this year, but I seem to remember maybe last year or the year before, since I think a couple of years. I take your point about time was an opportunity to reset some. It's July now.
Sorry, no, did I say June?
Yeah.
My mistake, I meant to say July.
Tomorrow.
It should be, so if that's not in members' diary, that's worrying, because it is in my diary.
I mean, I think there's something about the scheduling and the advertising, and then the monitoring of who comes to training. That happens. I think we just need to know, like child safeguarding. So I think that's really important. I mean, I can have a look now, but I just think we need to kind of get into a bit more rigor about that, or back into that.
Yes, because I know that. I was going to say, because I know it's something that I've stressed that it is continue. In terms of it being mandatory, I did ask officers about that, and council cannot make it mandatory, but as groups we can make it mandatory. So we have decided that all members should have done this at least once in the whole term, but actually more than that. But I think you're right, Councillor Mayor. It needs to just be on a regular basis. Councillor Lynch,
Chair,
you wanting to come in?
when we
mandatory.
are possible, as Councillor Maima has anybody that works in any other public sector, patient, client-facing role, regardless of your position, you're expected to do safeguarding. I think people that work in hospitality undertake safeguarding now. I find it incredible that we are allowing people to be selected as same as well. So it's not to do that, and it's just how do we get around this in a pragmatic.
The council could make it mandatory. My understanding is that I don't know if it kind of, because of lockdown, that hasn't been
Chair, could I just quickly come back? So GDPR training is mandatory.
so I can ask those from a legal as well, and it didn't make sense to me as well. I can only make go back to Dawn.
No, it was just, I guess, what we could do maybe as chair, maybe reaffirm and formally write
From Labour Group would do this as mandatory. We have done that.
what I feel, and probably what other members feel as well, is if we put on a training thing around some other subject matter that seems much more exciting, but actually we don't have a statutory duty for, but actually we as a council, as corporate parents, as you know, have a statutory duty to care and uphold safeguarding. We have that, you know, and I find it incredible. But I think there's something around the culture of members who will turn up to as elected councillors.
I totally agree, and you and Councillor Marie are not saying anything that group. Dawn, I don't know if you wanted to come.
Thanks very much.
Louise.
and Deputy Monitoring Officer, in further discussions with the Task and Finish group around, is whether or not we wanted to add an element to our new code of conduct, which would say effectively that as a councillor, that they would attend any training that is prescribed by the monitoring officer as being essential to their role. And some of the areas that we are
I think it's absolutely the right idea. I think that the new code of conduct gives us the flexibility and the avenue that we didn't have under the existing framework. So I think that really that we should absolutely adopt that. So can I take Councillor David, who indicated before, then Councillor William?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was just going to mention that I have the
And before that, the code of conduct and the things that we have to do are, we do say that it's mandatory. I think the challenge has been is that they happen at the very, very beginning of our cycle and are not necessarily repeated throughout. But that's happy to take that back and reinforce that. And as you rightly said, I think 15 members have indicated that they will be attending the safeguarding training tomorrow. But I think given that some members in the room weren't quite clear that it was happening, I think a reminder to go out tomorrow would be helpful on that, Bruce. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Louise, for we might comment on those, particularly if there are other training sessions that we think ought to be compulsory for members. I think times have changed. As well as
make a note of your suggestions, and what I will do is I will include those in the list within our draft code of conduct, and then when the proposed draft code of conduct goes back to the task and finish group, the task and finish group will obviously have a discussion around that to make recommendations then onwards to standards committee, and then finally onwards to full council, who will need to approve the new model code of conduct at the very end of this process.
Thank you, Louise, that's really helpful. Just to correct myself, I meant sexual harassment, and I am also on the group, so I will raise it there whenever it comes next. Thank you.
And I suppose just going back to Councillor Lynch's point about expectations, and I think that the new code is an opportunity for us to reaffirm our standards and expectations of elected members, I think, and going forward, the expectation of what is mandatory and what we expect. And then in addition, we're going to offer other training, but we can absolutely use this to reset the expectations of what we want and expect from members from this administration going forward. So yeah, I think those suggestions going forward will be very positive. And Bruce, if you could just resend a reminder tomorrow about the safeguarding training, and then I can liaise with the whips so we can see how many members have done safeguarding training within this term of office.
Yep, no problem at all.
Thank you. So, can I ask members to note the update regarding the council's members training and the development programme, and note our suggestions going forward in regards to the new code of conduct?
Noted.
No.
Move to item 9 on the agenda is to note in respect of the appointment of the co-opted members to Standards Committee. Louise, can I hand over to you?
I think the next item, Deputy Mayor Bramble, was about the independent person.
yeah.
I don't have a line.
You don't have a 9 on.
Our paper's 37.
Apologies, you're right. Independent person, Dawn, can I hand over to you? Just if you just hold fire for just a little while, Louise.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. So, as we said, this won't be very long. As she grows into this role, what we have done just so that we can assure members that that we are doing our best to bring Feral up to speed in terms of how the council works, how the role of the independent person works, and how it impacts upon members' daily duties and responsibilities. And so, as in usual, we don't have a large number of complaints, and I hope that it will remain that way. But the complaints that we do have, I'm happy that we've got somebody, I'm confident that we have somebody who will be able to look at each of those complaints independently and to do her best to adjudicate and to assist myself in adjudicating those matters before and after and during the time of us having received any complaints. So this report is recommended to members tonight. Thank you.
So does anyone have any comments? No. So I welcomed you formally at the beginning, but welcome again. So just ask members to note the report.
Noted.
Thank you. So Louise, now back over to you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. Just by way of an update in respect to progress with regards to the appointment of co-optees to the Standards Committee, members will recall that we currently have 4 vacancies for co-opted members. We, at the same time that we advertise for the role of the independent person, we also advertise for the role of co-optees. And as has been heralded by earlier comments this evening, regrettably, we were unable to make any recommendations for making an appointment. There were 2 applications. So our intention is that we will be going back out to advertisement, and we're currently working on redrafting the advert to try and attract greater attention. And we're also looking at the channels that we will use for that advertisement to make it as wide as possible. Given that we are rapidly approaching the summer vacation period, it's our current thinking that we will wait until the early part of September before we go back out to advertisement. But obviously, if members of this committee have any views on that, then we'll happily take those on board and into consideration. But other than that, I have no further update for you at this stage. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble.
Thank you. That's disappointing we weren't being able to appoint to those positions, but we'll continue to advertise and to do our best. Any comments or queries from members? Okay, can members just note the update?
Noted.
And then back to you, Louise, for an update on the proposed adoption of the new code of conduct. But to a degree, we've discussed that in essence in the meeting. But if there's anything else you'd want to add on that item.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. Just by way of further addition then to the information that members are already aware of from this evening, the LGA guidance, they were intending to produce a suite of guidance which would sit alongside the member code of conduct. That has now been published. It's available on their website, and your officers at the moment are going through that guidance to incorporate it as a piece of guidance alongside our new proposed code of conduct, obviously making amendments to it where we need to reflect the sort of variation from the proposed model code of conduct that have already been the subject of discussions at the Task and Finish group. So that process is in train. And then in addition, the LGA were also proposing to publish some guidance that would sit more for use by the monitoring officer around investigations and some further guidance from members on hearings if we get to a point where we need a hearing subcommittee to determine a code of conduct complaint. That guidance is still in consultation at the moment, but we're hoping it won't be too much longer, so that when we come to the task and finish group in early September, what we'll be able to do is have a whole suite of documents, the model code of conduct, the guidance, and then the associated guidance around investigations and hearings, and you'll be able to see all three and how they all interconnect with each other. So that's the update. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble.
Thank you. Any comments or queries? Okay. Can I ask members just to note the verbal update?
Noted.
And then item 11 on the agenda, an update on the code of conduct complaints. Can I ask Dawn to introduce this item, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. So this is just a very short update to members tonight, just confirming the current position with regards to complaints that have been submitted to the monitoring officer. As members will be aware, following the completion of our last independent person, Mr. Jonathan Stopps Rowe, we were unable to well, as if the monitoring officer, unfortunately, I was unable to progress any of the complaints that I had received due to us not having an independent person in place, and our processes for dealing with members' complaints clearly says that the monitoring officer is required to liaise with the independent person before deliberating or making any decisions on any complaints that are received. Both of those complaints make a deliberation as to whether those complaints are founded or not, and whether they should progress to the next stage. I think important. We take them very seriously. The public making complaints that the complaints are not taken seriously, but they are. They're all looked at, in great detail prior to any decision being made as to whether or not the complaint does not meet the threshold. There's a threshold that has to be met for each complaint that's received. And so, as I said before, when referring to the independent person, I will be working closely with her to continue the great work that we started with Jonathan Stopps Rowe, and to ensure that all complaints are dealt with equitably, and that we will, our residents can feel confident that, the correct attention is given. So as the year progresses, at the next Standards Committee meeting, I will be able to provide further details as to the number.
Thank you, Dawn. Any comments or queries? Can I ask the committee to note the report?
Noted.
And item 12 on the agenda, the date for the next meeting is the 16th of February 2022. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.